Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows come the best indie podcasts.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
True crime time with Mountain Murders.
You gotta pump it up.
Pump it up.
True crime.
That's right.
True crime.
Get the juices flowing.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
You're a silly Dylan.
That's it. See, that's our hard opening right there.
You're a silly Dill.
I am. I feel silly.
You look silly.
Okay.
If only they could see you.
Yeah.
Listeners.
I have clothes on, just so they know.
Dylan, we need to talk about something because we have another book that no one asked for.
Oh, man. Don't you love the books that no one asked for? And they're like, there's new book dropping.
This is a true crime book no one asked for. And they're claiming you're going to get never before shared details of the Black Dahlia murder in this new book.
See, when you said that, when you described the book to me in that fashion, I was already skeptical.
It's called Sisters in Death. It has been written by Emmy-nominated producer Eli Frankel. He connects the dots between the infamous cold case murder and another murder miles away.
Okay.
Now, I think we all know the story of Elizabeth Short. She was last seen at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles on January 9th of 1947. She was supposed to meet her sister. Nearly a week later, the Boston transplant was found dead in an undeveloped lot in Leimert Park. Short became known as the Black Dahlia. She was found mutilated with her body completely drained of blood. It has been a mystery, enduring mystery for like 80 years.
How do you do
80
this?
plus years.
How do you do this type of crime in such a heavily populated area?
Well, in this book, Frankel connects the shots between Short's murder with the murder of an heiress living in Kansas City named Leila Welsh. Welsh was found murdered in her bedroom, showing signs of, quote, unspeakable trauma. Now, he draws on some new documents, interviews with surviving participants of the case, and the victim's personal artifacts, and he reveals a never-before-shared key to the Black Dahlia murder and unmasks the criminal at the core of this case. But here's the thing, Dylan. This guy is speculating, like many folks have speculated before, like Steve Hodel, who believed his dad was the killer of the Black Dahlia.
Yeah.
But was also responsible for like the Zodiac killings and whatever. I mean, he's kind of, in my opinion, blown his credibility over the years.
Damn, his dad did it all, huh?
His dad did all the things, Dylan. So I think this guy is kind of grasping at straws to try to connect these two murders. I think the best book that is going to offer folks, I think, a true glimpse at what is likely the truth. I recently read this a couple months back. It's by Pugh Eatwell, and it's called Black Dahlia Red Rose: The Crime, Corruption, and Cover-Up of America's Greatest Unsolved Murder. And let me tell you, this book, I think it's very well written. There's so much research. It's so well done. And it really makes sense.
Yeah.
Like what happened.
You didn't.
And kind of gives you, the real story of the Black Dahlia. And I just have a hard time with the evidence presented in this book, The Black Dahlia Red Rose, that is going to be discredited by this Eli Frankel's book.
Full of speculation.
Full of speculation.
Right.
And connecting the two I just don't see it.
Well, and the Black Dahlia case has got to be what, top 5 or 3 of most written about, talked about, speculated cases
Yeah,
ever.
I would say it's probably LA's most known unsolved murder.
Yeah, so I mean,
She's infamous, the Black Dahlia.
it's hard to believe. Now you can write a book and try to cut out all the noise and rumors and just give just the facts, or and stuff like that. And I can see that happening. But if you're releasing a book with never before known details and blah this and that, then it doesn't surprise me that someone would feel maybe that you're kind of grasping at straws or speculating quite a bit. Because I mean, come on, this case has been gone over 10,000 times, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time believing that this fella has suddenly, unearthed all of this evidence and documents that are just going to blow us away. I don't believe it.
Right.
I think, folks, if you're interested in the Black Dahlia case, you must read Black Dahlia Red Rose. I'm telling you, it's a banger.
And it seems like you run across a lot of times because you read quite a bit of true crime books.
Dude, I read like a book a week.
From well-known big authors to little-known, people you've never heard of. And I think it's funny because you can quickly be turned off by the style it's written.
Yes.
And a lot of times it seems like, just from your descriptions, that the author just ends up talking about themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Or how it made them feel or something like that.
Yes.
Or just adding a whole lot of stuff that has nothing to do with the story.
Yes.
Because they're words in a sentence. I mean, it's very strange.
Well, there's a lot of what I believe are self-published true crime books out there.
Right.
So you find a case that you're interested in, you start the research process, you're like, oh, okay, here's a book. You immediately can tell the cover, even though I usually get digital, like, through Kindle or whatever, digital books. You can tell by the cover that it's like some cheesy homemade book.
Really?
Right? And then you start reading it and it's full of like grammatical errors, misspellings, and just sort of nonsensical.
Oh my gosh.
And you're like, who the fuck wrote this?
No editor, no anything.
No. So I think, in my shoes here, I guess as a researcher, you really do have to dig through material to find out what is accurate and what is not accurate, and these inaccuracies that you find in some of this stuff. But it's pretty easy, I think, over the years with what I do here with Mountain Murders. I've been able to kind of spot, like, wait a minute, I think this book is sketchy. It's got one-star review on Amazon.
I really like this book.
Not gonna read. Okay.
Well, and I've seen the books be so bad it derails Heather from doing the case at all.
Yes.
Gosh.
That's happened a couple of times.
My gosh.
All right, Dylan, we have an interesting case to get into today. It is a tragic case, and I think it's going to leave our listeners with a lot of unanswered questions.
Oh, gosh.
Even though there's a resolution.
Oh, it's one of those.
You know what I mean? It's going to linger with you. Because I feel like even though there's resolution, there's not a lot of closure here.
Okay.
At least not in my true crime mind.
Well, let's dig into it.
On a Thursday afternoon around 4:31 p.m. on June 15th of 2017, an emergency call was received by Stark County 911 dispatchers, and Stark County is located in Ohio. The caller hung up, like as soon as 911 dispatcher answered the phone. There's no one on the other end, and then they hear like the click, someone's hung up. When the dispatcher tried to call the number back, there was no answer. So the call was routed to the nearest police station with, like an advisement to go, can you go do like a welfare check at this house?
Or like a drive-by.
Yeah.
Just go check it out.
Right. The sheriff sent 2 deputies to an address on 9115 Dolphin Street in Bolivar, Ohio. Less than 1,000 people lived in Bolivar at the time, and I'm imagining since 2017, in the past 8 years, I doubt it's exploded in population. So very small town. Very small. Much of the area was rural with farmland. The house sat about 200 yards back from the road and had a private driveway lined with electric fencing and livestock. So farmhouse.
Yeah, so it sounds like your standard farmhouse. They typically set way off the road on a, large chunk of property.
As officers approached the home, they heard a gunshot. The officers immediately called for backup. The front door was open, and they could see a person lying on the floor, kind of like in front of the door. Inside the home, law enforcement found lots of blood and 3 family members bloodied and 2 dead.
They literally heard the gunshots?
They heard a gunshot.
A gunshot?
Yeah. The Stockdale family band was set to perform at the Amish County Theater in Walnut Creek. Around these parts, the Stockdales were seen as minor celebrities. They had appeared a few years back on the reality show Wife Swap. Kathy Stockdale had swapped places with a city lady for 2 weeks. Kathy's husband Tim had formed this successful bluegrass band with their 4 sons, and the family toured all over the United States. Kathy acted, well, I said all over the United States. They toured in some specific states, I should say.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Pennsylvania, Michigan, kind of the surrounding states around Ohio. So not really across the United States.
So they were regional celebrities.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
So would you ever do wife swap?
Well, first I think we should talk about Wife Swap because we may have some listeners who don't know what Wife Swap is.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
So Wife Swap is a reality show where 2 families, often with starkly different lifestyles, values, or parenting styles, swipe wives or mothers for 2 weeks. And the show's goal is loosely to explore social and cultural differences through this exchange.
Yeah, like the first week, the new mom has to go by that family's rules, and then in the second week, she gets to put up new rules.
Right. So the visiting wife has to adapt to the household rules, routine, structure of this new family, no matter how drastically different it is. And then in the second week, she gets to implement her own rules, take control, and introduces kind of her own values to the host family, often challenging these long-held beliefs or routine. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, both families, including the swiped wives and the husbands, get to meet and discuss what they've learned, how the experience maybe impacted them, changed them, and whether or not they'll make any of the changes the other mother introduced into the household. It's often dramatic and emotional and really over the top.
Oh, no, it's
I mean, I understand they're trying to paint it like it's this study in, social norms or something. But they definitely, I think, edit and try to make certain families appear like way crazier than they really are.
Well, they do, but sometimes the families really are crazy, and there's it seems like there's genuine freakouts. And I've seen them almost come to blows when the husband and wives get together, because they're like, you know what he did to me? I'm like, what you do, my wife? You some bitch.
Yeah, it's like they want it to end in a Jerry Springer fist fight or something.
So if you've never watched it, you like reality
it's super
TV,
trashy.
Look up Wife Swap. It is pretty great.
Dylan loves trashy shows. He introduced me to Wife Swap.
Okay.
Would I wife swap?
Yeah.
Do you mean for the TV show or like at a key party?
No, we've always wondered if anybody's humping.
I've always wondered, like
did they hook up?
Like, has there ever been like sex between the swiped wife and the new husband?
Black, you can just keep her. I'm gonna keep this new one.
Yeah, I mean, for real. All right, so back to the story. So the band toured, we'll just say regionally. Kathy acted as manager and publicist for the band, so it was truly a family affair. By 2017, the 2 oldest sons had moved out. Only the 2 youngest sons, James and Jacob, still played with their father, Tim. Jacob Stockdale, an award-winning fiddle player at 25, was considered the main attraction. He performed regularly at the Walnut Creek Theater. So in the early 1980s, we're going to talk a little bit about Tim and Kathy and how this family came to be. So in the early 1980s, Tim and Kathy met while they were students at Ohio State University. They were both pursuing degrees in agriculture. The pair had a lot in common. They were both raised with staunch conservative, fundamentalist Christian beliefs. They shared a passion for Christian music, and they both wanted to live a simple life filled with hard work. I do not dream of a life filled with hard work, but that's just me.
Well, some people, it's just comfortable to them. They, grew up around it. It's just, it's a good, honest day of work. There's something.
I dream of leisure.
There's something satisfying about a good, hard day's work.
Yeah, I just dream of being rich and leisurely. That's all I want.
It used to satisfy me more than it does now. But, you got something accomplished. You're tired, but, you feel accomplished and you feel like you created something, if whatever.
Tim had been playing rhythm guitar since he was a child, often entertaining his family. Kathy didn't play any instrument, but she did appreciate Tim's talent. Kathy also liked that Tim's music was usually wholesome gospel music or bluegrass with no swearing or inappropriate lyrics.
Okay.
They shared the same view that dating should only be considered if it led to marriage. So they don't believe in casual dating. Which, there's something to be said for that.
Well, I think that's something that a lot of us, unless you were raised like this and stick to those tenets, kind of realize later in life that there is your dating it's a big deal. You know what I mean? Consequences can come out of those types of relationships, and I never really slowed down and took a step back and thought about the what ifs of dating someone, and I think I might have done different things if I'd ever really contemplated that.
Well, yeah, I think as a society we've definitely moved away from this idea that you're dating to find a long-term partner. Dating nowadays is very casual. You've got this hookup culture.
Yeah.
A lot of folks are anti-marriage, or you get women who complain that men today don't want to settle down or don't want a commitment, but then men are also like, I don't want to settle down with a woman who's done, XYZ kind of, So it just seems really complicated.
No,
I feel like it doesn't have to be.
Me and you talk about it all the time.
We've made it complicated.
The dating scene nowadays, no matter your age category, just the culture that exists with the
swiping
and the dating apps, and just people always think that something better is just around the corner, kind of thing, and it's like no one even takes it serious. If you really want to date, to meet people and find that one,
you should do eHarmony.
That's even scarier than if you just want to hook up. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have a hard time unless you luck up like I did.
I lucked up.
And I found my wife.
Well, there were a lot of frogs before I got to this prince. I'll just say that.
Oh, did you kiss them all?
Well, no. No, some of them were undeserving of my kiss.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot of trolls out there, bud.
No, but the dating scene's very strange and weird.
It's so strange. We were out this weekend, and I said to you, just kind of scanning the place, if I had to be single right now, I would just be single. Because I was like, there's not a single man in this room that grabs my attention.
Right.
Or it interests me.
No, and our favorite game is to just guess who's dating and
you
their
can always
backstory.
tell who's on the prowl, who might be dating, who's there to hook up. I would say the lady that was rolling around on the floor and twerking, she was dead, and you said she was she stuck to the seat, which I don't know what that means.
There was all kinds of stuff happening in that corner.
So she suction cupped to the seat?
Yeah.
And you saw this?
Well, yeah. It's like when you have that goo when you're a kid and you throw it against the wall and then it kind of rolls
the weird
down the wall.
hand,
Yeah.
the splat hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
So she stuck to the seat?
Well, no.
That doesn't sound very sexy when she was trying to be sexy.
Well, I don't know if the $15, City Trends dress told you what she was all about or not.
That was not $15. That was more like $5 on clearance.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, and the poor thing twerked herself out. They had to take her home and put her in bed.
Yeah,
All of a sudden
that's
they
what
were
you said.
missing.
You were like, man,
She ground herself out.
She had to go home and go to sleep. She wore herself out
She did.
twerking.
Oh no. All right, back to the story.
All right, so they're very serious about looking for a spouse. Like, they're not trying to just date, whatever. They end up dating and getting married on August 10th of 1985. A few years later, they had their first son, Calvin. Charles followed 2 years later. In 2 more years, they had Jacob. And then James, the baby of the family, was born in 1996. So they got little stair-step kids. All boys. The Stockdales had a traditional marriage and household. Tim worked outside the home, providing for the family. Kathy was a stay-at-home mom who tended to the household chores like cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the 4 boys. They also had made a decision that they were going to homeschool their children. So Kathy was responsible for the boys' education.
Which is a big deal.
It's a lot of work.
And I think, sometimes
especially for having multiple children.
Yeah, if you're going to do it for real, and like actually try to educate, which is a tough thing. And I think sometimes the parent who stays at home and does all that, be it the woman or the man, don't get enough credit when you throw homeschooling in there too. That's a lot.
Kathy and Tim wanted to shield their children from what they considered to be bad things: smoking, drinking, drugs, sexual promiscuity, violent language, and, most importantly, rap music.
Oh, gosh.
There was no sexy red in this house. No one was shaking your asshole or letting their coochie breathe in this household.
No, and everything had a parental advisory.
Hands on your knees. Yeah, none of that. The children were not allowed to watch television, but instead were given instruments. Not instruments of death or dental instruments, but musical instruments, Dylan. They also had chores around the home along with their schoolwork. The boys were encouraged to read for fun or play music with each other for entertainment.
Well, that's pretty cool.
It is. Tim and Kathy dreamed of living on a farm in a rural area. The family purchased a 150-year-old farm in Bolivar, Ohio in 1999. The farm would be an opportunity for the family to become self-sufficient, growing their own food, raising livestock, and of course, rearing their sons to be hardworking, God-fearing men. Tim would say, quote, "The day we moved in, we heard gunshots in our neighborhood, and I knew we made the right decision." I don't know how many people would feel that way.
Well, out in the country,
But out in the country, it
it's
is
different.
Expected. You kind of, expect to hear some shooting sometimes.
Yeah, that likely means someone is either target practicing or hunting.
Yeah.
Not murdering their neighbor.
The family found a place of worship at Zion Reformed Church, which had broken away from the Presbyterian Church. This sect was an ultra-conservative church, sort of teaching, like the scripture, word for word. So they had a real, rigid point of, there was no flexibility in the scripture.
There's no modern translation of the scripture or anything like that.
No, you're not going to get a rock band. The pastor is not wearing $200 diesel jeans and some trendy tennis shoes. No, this is not that kind of church.
There's no youth pastor with the frosted highlights.
No.
Frosted tips.
There's no Kelvin gemstone at this church. Now, being on a farm in a small community, the family became quite insular. Every moment of the children's lives was structured by Kathy and Tim, who rarely let them leave the farm. Kathy said, quote, "Everything they need is here on the farm with their family." The Stockdales were also pretty firm on eating a very strict diet. They ate a lot of organic food. It was very important to Tim and Kathy that they knew where their food came from. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way these days.
Yeah, and if you're able to grow enough vegetables to put away for all winter, or raise a pig or a cow or something, I think that's pretty cool. If you have the fortitude to fit, go all the way through butchering and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's a pretty big movement, wellness and what have you, for people to kind of get back into eating healthy, local, That's been a push for, I would say, probably about a decade now. Farm to table food.
Yeah, but for a while it was like kind of the Crunchy Grooves people who were doing that. But now that's really went, and for some years now, it's went mainstream. People are seeing the value of small batch, local, and things like that. And I mean, you've talked about this before. I think fast food places are basically on their way out.
I don't foresee there being a boom in like the fast food industry in the next
I don't-
10, 15 years.
I don't know
I
how
think
they
it's
stay
on a
open.
decline.
Because everywhere around me, I see these places. They're just now and again, you'll see 3 or 4 cars in the drive-through, but it's nothing like the way it used to be.
Well, no, and I also find a lot of young people, like people much younger than me, like our kids, for example, are a lot more like health-minded
They are.
when it comes to food. Like you were saying something earlier today about young people. You're like, they do not eat hot dogs.
No, we were talking about like the old drive-in style restaurants. The
Curb service,
greasy burger and the
diner where you're going to get the burger, the dog,
everything's
fries,
fried.
Coke, a
Yeah.
milkshake.
Yeah. And they really do. And though they have plenty of bad eating habits as well, but they do at least think about things like organic or small batch or what's actually in there. That's what they think about more than we did as young people. They actually wonder what's in there, what's
Yeah.
in the food.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a whole food. And like you said, it's not all young people, but I do see with our kids and their friends that there does seem to be a little bit more thought about what they put in their mouths, food-wise.
Food-wise.
Maybe not the other things they put in their mouths, but I'm just saying. Let's move on. So the family raised chickens, pigs, and cattle for beef. What they couldn't grow on the farm, they traded with other local farmers. The family was totally against processed foods. The boys were not allowed to eat sugar, wheat, or junk food. People who knew the family noted how the children would even turn down sugary snacks or junk food if it was offered. Like if there was some kind of like Bible school and they had cookies, the boys would be like, no thanks. So they were so disciplined that even when their parents weren't around, they didn't eat those foods.
It's like they didn't want them, period, right?
Farming didn't pay the bills, so Tim still had to maintain a full-time job. He delivered animal nutrients to farms across Ohio. So I'm not really sure if he was like a salesman or delivery driver, but he had a job.
Sounds like he's in some way connected to delivering feed.
Kathy dedicated herself to the children. Homeschool began early in the morning and lasted for a few hours. The rest of the day was filled with chores and farm work. With hard work, the boys could earn tokens, and these tokens could be used for certain privileges, like listening to a radio program or even getting a piece of chewing gum.
Wow.
So you could kind of trade your token in for different things, and you have a certain amount of tokens that meant like, well, you can listen to the radio.
Damn.
But it has to be like certain programming.
Right.
They're probably listening to like Prairie Home Companion or something. That might even be a little too racy. I don't know. The boys were not allowed to watch television, play video games, or really like play unsupervised with other children. The family did have internet access, but the boys were limited, only allowing them to like log on if they had a specific educational purpose, like if it was for research. But just to log on the internet, all willy-nilly, nah, you weren't allowed to do that.
Well, I see some value in the way they're raising their children, and of course, it's the way they see fit. They could care less what someone else thinks, I'm sure. But I gotta say, to a degree, it seems a bit, especially as the children age, it's a little smothering. Would you say?
Well, I think parents have the option of raising their children. I mean, that's what's great about America. People can raise their kids how they see fit. They can instill values, morals, like whatever they believe, they can do that with their children. But it does seem a bit restrictive. I guess I see some positive things here.
Yeah, I see many
because I
positive.
imagine these are probably just like really good boys and they've got a good work ethic and
they're healthy.
They're not lazy. Yeah, I mean, they listen to their parents. They're obedient to their parents, respectful to their parents, you don't see that a lot of times with young people.
No, it's
Or,
true.
some parents have kids in their face cussing them like a dog.
Yeah.
Like a dog, Dylan. But yeah, I mean, I think, as kids get older, you have to allow them to make their own choices. Like, you've instilled these values into your children. You've raised them right, in your opinion. So you have to trust that they're going to be able to make good decisions.
Well, yeah, and you got to let them make the small mistakes.
You got to
along
give
the
them a
way.
little rope.
Because
You got to let them make a few mistakes too, because how are they ever going to learn if they don't get to make choices, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes?
adversity is a very important thing to deal with.
Make a choice. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's all very important. Tim and Kathy did not allow the boys to participate in sports. They were not allowed to date until they were ready for marriage.
Okay.
And the only time the boys left the farm was for church, music lessons, Boy Scouts, or the debate club that was held with other homeschooled children. Charles and Jacob did attend a woodworking class once a week. During the summers, the boys worked on other farms and sold chickens to earn a little pocket money. Now, this money was used to pay for the music lessons or for tools they might need for the woodworking class, to pay for the classes.
I thought they could buy something they wanted with it.
No.
No.
Well, what could they possibly want? They have everything right there with their family.
Well, according to their mom,
Yeah.
they have everything they need.
Yeah.
They might want like a BB gun or something.
No. They got real guns, bud.
They might want to buy.
They out in the country. They got real guns. Music became a daily activity. The boys began to learn a variety of instruments. Tim played rhythm guitar. Calvin played multiple instruments but specialized in the banjo. He was also the band's frontman and lead vocalist. Charles played mandolin and guitar, but he would also sing with his brother some. James played the upright bass, but the most talented performer in the band, as I mentioned, was Jacob, who played the fiddle. By the time he was 13, he had won 5 fiddle contests, including the State of Ohio Youth Fiddle Championship.
Damn.
He's like a mean fiddle player, Dylan. At first, the band played for family and friends, but quickly started booking gigs, mostly for like church events. Kathy went to work building a website, managing the band, booking their shows, negotiating fees. She reached out to churches, encouraging them to book the Stockdale family band. And by 2007, the Stockdales were booked nearly every weekend.
Wow.
Like, they did not have a free Saturday night.
Well, that's fairly successful for a small band, right?
Then in April of 2007, that's when the call came in from ABC Television. They were looking for a family bluegrass band to feature on the show Wife Swap. And as we explained earlier, it's a lot of drama, families who have polar opposite lifestyles.
Yeah, so I could see their swapping family would be like a punk rock family with no rules.
A family of Satanists.
Yeah.
Now, at first, Kathy was not interested when she spoke to, like the producers. They didn't have a television after all. I mean, she's like, we don't even have a television. So, like, why would we want to be on a TV show?
Right.
The producers explained to Kathy that she would trade places with someone from an urban area for 2 weeks. They wanted to, like, have the rural family and then someone, trade places with the city folk
Right.
kind of thing. Of course, the money, which they could earn up to $20,000, would also help the family. So Kathy changed her mind a little bit. Then she was on board with like, okay, that's a lot of money. Tim wasn't totally convinced, but eventually caved. The children were really excited about this opportunity. So let's talk about this episode, Dylan. I've seen this episode.
I feel like I might have.
I've seen this episode. Kathy left her family in Ohio to go to Poplar Grove, Illinois, which is not a huge town, but it's more cityfied than where they were living. The Tonkovics, that's the family she switched places with, were very different from the Stockdales. The Tonkovics manual explained that the family might throw a party with 150 kids on a night.
Oh, gosh.
And there was drinking and partying and hooking up and what, yeah. She would be living with 52-year-old John, 21-year-old Paul, and 17-year-old Megan. Now, Kathy was shocked to learn that the kids had significant others who also lived in the family home.
No, this is like the spawn of Satan.
The new family was messy, disorganized. None of the kids had jobs. They would leave dishes stacked in the sink for days. You know, just nobody's really cleaning the house. No chores.
Kathy did not care for this.
Yeah, so like I said, this new family was quite messy. Kathy also learned that 21-year-old Paul aspired to be a rapper and would spit fat rhymes about sex and violence.
He has hot fire.
During the first few days of filming, the family threw a rager of a party, Dylan, and Kathy was not pleased with this. The Tonkovic family felt Kathy was extremely judgmental. As you can imagine, the other wife experienced a culture shock as well, moving into the very regimented Stockdale household. After the show, not much really changed for the Stockdale family. The boys were allowed to play pre-approved video games that were introduced by Lori Tonkovic if they earned enough points. So that was really the only thing that was kind of allowed to continue after this show ended.
I bet that was a big deal for the kids, though.
Now, one of the things that was kind of a point of contention in the household was when Lori Tonkovic asked the two older brothers, like, you know, they're like 16, 18, whatever, like, are you not interested in girls? Do you not want to go out on dates? And they both were like, no, we're not really interested in that. You know, we'll only do that when we're about to get married. But she really pushed that these boys go on a date.
Yeah.
And the father, Tim, he's not happy about this.
No.
Like, not at all. He finally gives in and lets the boys go on dates. And when they come back, they're like, yeah, you know, that was pretty fun hanging out. You know, maybe we'd like to do that again. And the dad's like, yeah, we'll talk about that. But no, that was not something they were going to allow to continue.
Right.
So yeah, it's a pretty interesting episode. I'll say that. Now, they continued touring with the band after wife swap. Kathy continued managing the band. A person who knew the family said Kathy micromanaged the band. Quote, I do not think there is an English word to describe the micromanaging and oppression.
See, micromanaging is not good, no matter the circumstance or the setting or who's involved, but the people getting micromanaged are going to be resentful of
Dude,
that.
I hate it. I'm like,
And
get the hell out of my face.
And
don't
honestly, I think it is counterproductive when people think that they're, nailing down every single little detail. What they're doing is they're stifling innovation. They're stifling the talents of everyone around them. You got to give people room to, either make it or fail.
Yeah.
So they can learn lessons from both of those.
One of my last employers, I was with for quite a while, very much a micromanager, the owner. And we finally had to have like a come to Jesus meeting and tell him, like, you got to get the fuck out of our way.
Well, yeah, but
Like,
he was he would make bad decisions.
Oh, always. It was always like, we're going to do this. And it was like the worst thing you could possibly do. He had no understanding of like branding, just anything.
Right. That's even worse.
He was really stuck. It was radio. And he was really stuck in this like 1960s, when he'd done radio in Vietnam.
Right.
With like the zoo radio and the sound effects and, that kind of goofy shit. And we're like, bro, that does not play today.
He's like, where's my soundboard?
Yeah, like for real. I mean, we had to like talk him off the ledge. Like, this motherfucker was so goofy, Dylan, that one morning he was in the studio, and this was before I went to work there. But there were all these stories about him. So the story was, he did the morning show with this other younger woman. And she had a background in radio. Like, she had worked in Charlotte, North Carolina for a big station, conglomerate station. Like, so she kind of understood, being a producer and all that. So they're doing a morning show, and they did not have any chemistry because he would just say stupid shit and she would just not respond because it was idiotic and she just like didn't even know what to say
Right.
to this clown. But for whatever reason, this one morning they were talking about a fire or some song, and he was like, oh, or it had like a fire in the title. And he was like, oh, yeah, that's real sizzling. And like, I'm going to get my lighter out. And got his lighter out and started like flicking it. And it caught the mic screen that's like styrofoam, you know?
Yeah.
Caught that shit on fire live in the studio. And they had to like quickly break to commercial and put this fire out.
Yeah.
Well, another coworker saved that audio.
I bet it's hilarious.
And played it for me. Yeah. Because it was like such a joke that this audio had been like saved because it was such a goofy moment. But again, it's like, what are you doing? You could have burned your shit down.
Well, micromanaging sucks, but especially if you're getting micromanaged by someone who's kind of dumb and just not good at whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
I don't like it. Jacob earned an Ohio Arts Council traditional arts apprenticeship where he was able to learn Ohio-style fiddling under master fiddler Adam Jackson. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Well, yeah, it's incredible.
For the other brothers, the band was a way to earn a little extra money, but Jacob saw it differently. Like, music was his life. And he's the one that's like the real, he shines on stage. He's got the real talent. So he takes it very seriously. While the other brothers, they like it, but it's not something they see themselves doing long term.
They don't love it.
After Wife Swap aired, Kathy started a YouTube channel, and Tim joined Facebook so they could share videos and updates about the band. Although Kathy said she would not repeat the Wife Swap experience, she certainly used the fame of being on the show to their advantage, often adding like, as seen on Wife Swap to press releases and flyers.
Oh, that's smart.
By the time the episode aired, Calvin had already left for college. In 2010, Charles also left for Hillsdale College, and although the older boys were away, they were still expected to participate in summer concerts and special weekends. They're like a 4-hour drive from the family home, but they were expected to make that drive on the weekends for shows.
Well, I mean, that sounds like that'd be kind of hard to, keep all your commitments like that. And that's the thing with a family band like this, You're going to have your little heyday moment, but the kids are going to get older. They're going to start wanting to go into different directions.
Well, later that year in 2010, Calvin got a job at the Institutional Advancement Department at Hillsdale College. He moved out of the family home altogether, got engaged, and moved to Michigan. He got married in 2011. So with the two oldest boys gone, the band needed to find a replacement player. Joe Steiner from Findlay, Ohio, joined the band as a banjo and harmonica player. Sometimes James and Jacob would play duets together as the Stockdale brothers. So they would just do like this 2-man show. And they had like comedy elements with the music. James was the confident brother. He didn't really mind, being the showman, getting on stage, kind of making a fool of himself, being the butt of the joke, being real silly. While Jacob was like the real talent and took it and was considered the more serious brother.
Okay.
So when they're doing kind of like these little skits, he's like, the straight guy.
Well, that works though.
Right. While his brother's kind of the comical, relief or comic relief.
You almost have to have that in a little 2-man or 2-person act like that.
Do we?
Yeah. I would like to think I'm the straight guy in our relationship.
That's questionable, but you are, never mind. The Stockdale family band minus Calvin won first place at the Heights Got Talent contest in Cleveland Heights, Ohio in 2014.
That's a great name.
Jacob also had the honor of being the featured soloist with the Tuscarawas Philharmonic Orchestra. That same year, Charles moved to Temple University to pursue a PhD in organic chemistry. He got married in 2015. So, by all accounts, Kathy was happy to see her boys move on with their lives, settle down, find a career they loved, all that.
Yeah, sounds like they did pretty good in college and, got good careers started.
Yeah. Jacob and James released their first CD in 2016 as the Stockdale Brothers Duet. Now, when the time came, James decided to attend Kent State University, where he studied business management. Jacob had no interest in going to college. His heart was in farming and music. Jacob learned as much as he could about farming, staying with his parents, kind of took over, like, running the farm. He began growing exotic lettuces and, like, other unique vegetables, really kind of honing in on, like, the best ways to be successful with these food items.
Well, that's smart. He's finding these little niche markets, and and you can probably get a higher payout on a smaller yield.
Yeah, I believe he and Kathy went around, like, kind of all over the state to farmers markets selling their produce and meats. So, and chicken. So they were able to make some money that way. And he also offered private music lessons. James and Jacob had a pretty full schedule of shows to play. They had concerts, fairs, private parties to do, during the summer months. So it was on June 15th of 2017 that Harry McNutt Jr., the Stockdale's neighbors, heard a series of rapid gunshots. There was enough time to reload, then 4 or 5 or even 6 more shots came. So he thought someone was doing target practice. Like you mentioned before, people are out in the country. They shoot.
Yeah, it's not a big deal to hear somebody unload.
Right. So he's not really thinking a whole lot about it. Not long after, that's when deputies from Stark County show up at the Stockdale residence, and as they approach the house, the family dog ran up. They had noticed he had been pacing back and forth in front of the door, whining. So as they approach near the house, they hear that gunshot, and that's when they're like, hey, we have to wait for backup to come. Now, when backup arrived, law enforcement made their way into the home. In the doorway, a young man was lying on the floor, and he suffered a gunshot wound to the head and had a 20-gauge shotgun lying by his side. Another young man was found in the kitchen with blood pooled around him from a gunshot, and a woman was in the upstairs bathroom, a gunshot wound to the head. Now, It was clear to law enforcement that James and Kathy Stockdale were dead.
That sounds like
they didn't need of course EMS comes and declares, but they knew right away, like, these people, there's no saving these people, they're dead.
That's just a horrific scene with multiple victims, and it must be hard being a police officer and an emergency services personnel, seeing this type of thing a lot.
Yeah, it's my understanding that a lot of paramedics and EMTs, those emergency service workers, there's a really high rate of burnout.
Right.
And also a really high rate of suicide.
Well, yeah, and I think
because they have a lot of PTSD.
They're just now starting to address those types of things for people in these types of fields of work, because you're not meant to see mangled bodies and wrecks and homicide scenes
just
and things.
Some of the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
And the worst deaths possible, the worst ways for people to die.
Yeah.
And you see it, like, all the time. Jacob Stockdale was rushed to the Cleveland Metro Hospital, where he remained in critical condition. Now, when Tim arrived home from work, he was greeted with this tragic news that his wife and youngest son were dead, and that his other son was in critical condition. Another shocking reveal came as law enforcement explained Jacob had made a 911 call and waited for police to arrive before shooting himself in the head. Evidence pointed to the 25-year-old fiddle prodigy Jacob, who had murdered his brother and mother before trying to kill himself.
Damn.
Jacob had no criminal record and no mental health issues that they could find. But now, of course, with the way Kathy and Tim raised their children, and they belong to this church, they possibly could have been against, like, mental health.
Because they're kind of this Christian fundamentalist mentality.
Like, God can fix you, you don't need to go to a psychiatrist.
That's right.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not sure that's what they believed, but I'm just assuming, which might make an ass of me. But maybe that's why he had never had any help. Or maybe he just didn't need it. I don't know. Calvin and Tim released statements about the tragedy. Calvin said, quote, "I don't know why Jacob did what he did last week, but I do know he is my brother. I speak for our family when I say we love him and forgive him." The community rallied around the family, even raising $32,000 to help cover Jacob's medical expenses.
Okay.
Media interest in the murders was intense, mostly due to the family's association with wife swap. People who only got a heavily dramatized and edited 30-minute show scrutinized the family and blamed Kathy for her strict parenting and rules. You can imagine the Reddit boards and the internet comments.
Well, yeah, but I mean, honestly, we all know that's not a fair assessment of someone. Like you said, heavily edited, maximized for drama and, whatever.
However, folks who knew the family personally said that sheltered aspect was really blown out of proportion for the TV show, that the Stockdales were a loving, supportive family who engaged with the community often, and that the family traveled and they were well-liked and popular.
Well, I was going to say, just given the band and traveling all around and being so busy with the music, I mean, you're meeting all these people and you're kind of like everybody wants to talk to the band, right?
Well, maybe when you were younger, when the boys were younger, they might have been more sheltered.
Right.
But as they grew older and became these talented musicians and formed this band, yeah, it sounds like they were exposed to, a lot of different people, diverse groups of people. They traveled.
Right. You have all these interactions with people.
Jacob remained in the hospital for months with severe head injuries. In September, the autopsy reports for James and Kathy were finalized. However, the double homicide investigation was still pending, but prosecutors wanted to wait until Jacob could walk and talk again before making an arrest. A year and a half after the senseless murders, 26-year-old Jacob was secretly indicted by a Stark County grand jury on the murder counts. He turned himself in, and he pled not guilty. The gunshot had disfigured his face, leaving one eye drooping, which was quite noticeable in his mugshot.
Damn.
Yeah. The death penalty was off the table. Jacob was looking at 15 to life on each charge of murder if he was found guilty. Jacob's lawyer entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity in January of 2019. He also suggested that Jacob might not be competent to stand trial. At a hearing in May of 2019, the court declared he was incompetent to stand trial based on a mental health evaluation. He was transferred to a secure psychiatric facility, and the trial was delayed. A report made by Jacob's psychiatrist in October of 2019 stated that he was able to hold conversations with the music therapist. He could play intricate compositions during these one-on-one interactions, but if he was supposed to perform with like a group or in a group setting, he would play simpler music or just wouldn't perform at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. Prosecutors suspected that he might be faking some of this, mental illness or whatever. They ordered Jacob's phone records be released so they could determine how he communicated with his family in private or when he thought no one could read or see his messages. Jacob tried to escape from the facility twice in November and December of 2019. He was back in court in February of 2020, and the psychologist assigned to the case concluded that Jacob was competent to stand trial for the double murders. With the onset of COVID-19, his trial was pushed back until May of 2021. Staff at the psychiatric facility had shared their concerns with the judge that Jacob might be a flight risk because he had tried to escape twice, and he had even confided in the barber that he resembled a cousin and that if he were able to get keys, he would leave the facility and could probably pretend to be the cousin.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's telling a barber at the facility this like the barber's not going to go tell someone.
If I escape, this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't understand anyone that tells anyone they're in jail with about themselves or their case.
I would just make up all kinds of crazy shit to tell people.
Yeah. I'd be like, and then the clowns popped out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honk, honk. The judge moved Jacob out of the hospital and into the Stark County Jail to await trial. A week before he was scheduled to go to trial, Jacob Stockdale changed his plea to guilty. He was sentenced to a minimum 15 years each for the murders, so he would end up spending the next 30 years in prison.
Damn.
Due to the guilty plea, no information came to light at a trial. There was no testimony or evidence that might offer a motive for the murders of Kathy and Jacob.
So that's where it's left at?
Yeah, the remaining Stockdale family members say they have put their faith in God, and they're just, they're kind of living their life serving the Lord, and they believe, everything is going to be all right.
Okay. Well, so he just snapped, sounds like?
We don't know.
Wow.
I'm wondering if, they recorded this CD together, and maybe Jacob wanted to pursue that career, and James was off at college doing his own thing and maybe said, I don't want to do this.
Right.
And maybe his brother lost his cool. Maybe it was over the music.
Okay.
Or what he thought was like, you're abandoning me. What about my career? Or maybe he just snapped. Maybe he just had enough of this life. I mean, I don't know. We can speculate all day.
Right. Damn. I didn't think this is the direction it was going in, so I'm kind of surprised.
Really?
Well, I thought maybe Dad, like murder-suicided the whole family or something.
Well, surprise, you're wrong.
Damn, man. What drives you to want to kill your own family like this? And I get, things like abuse or, physical, mental, sexual abuse for years and years and years, and you finally snap. I understand that. But minus those, to just lose it and kill everyone around you, the people that are closest to you.
Well, again, maybe he had an untreated mental illness that we don't know about. But we'll never know. I mean, unless he comes forward and offers up that information. I mean, who's to say he's not going to sit down with 2020 one day or something, or Dateline?
Maybe he'll get a ghostwriter and write a book and title it, well, what had happened was.
What had happened was? Is that the title of your self-published book?
That's my memoirs.
Okay. I like that.
You like that?
It's a good title for you, Dylan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, unless he comes forth and, explains...
Right.
The motive, I mean, we don't know. A lot of people on the internet have speculated that it was because of this very strict household and the way Tim and Kathy, raised the boys, that maybe he had just had enough of it and kind of snapped.
Yeah, and people are going to do that almost as a given because they don't agree with raising your kids like that. They find it foreign, and they want to find fault in it. You know what I'm saying? Because if you find out that that's a great way to raise your kids, you might feel like you didn't raise your kids. You were inadequate in what you did with your kids.
It seems that the Stockdales raised successful children.
Yeah.
They're adult children, college graduates, had good jobs, families. Charles was getting a PhD in organic chemistry.
That's what I'm saying.
Can't be easy, right?
No.
It sounds like James was going to college, doing his thing. So, I mean, they all seemed like successful young men, on their way. But I mean, maybe that did affect Jacob in a different way.
Yeah,
we'll just never know.
You're right.
But I'm surprised. I mean, I remember when this happened, but I'm very surprised that it has not been more of a popular true crime story. As many documentaries as we see produced all the time.
Yeah, I know.
We can have 30 on Gabby Petito, but we don't have one on this case because this is a pretty recent case.
Man, I saw one that is like that. Who was it? Sherry Papini?
Yeah. Did you watch that?
No, but I will just to make it because she's like, well, let me tell the real story. I'm like, dude, we know the real story. You're a piece of shit. That's the story.
Yeah, I mean,
You're
besides that, what else can you say?
You're
How
a-
can you justify your actions?
You're a monster who didn't care anything about your family or your kids or your husband or anything.
or that you started a possible racial tension by blaming it on like these Mexican women or these
Yeah.
Hispanic women. I mean,
I know. Let alone all the community resources burned through looking for you.
you know who she reminds me of?
Who?
Susan Smith.
I know.
She's very much a Susan Smith. They have very similar personalities, I think, because Susan Smith all these years has tried to justify murdering her sons
Yeah.
and tell her side of the story and paint herself as like she's the real victim of all this.
Still a narcissist.
Yeah. And I think Sherry Papini is very much in that same like realm as Susan Smith
And Casey Anthony.
and Casey Anthony.
I mean, what the hell? How do you even try? If you're Casey Anthony, how in the world do you try to come out and have any kind of public persona after all this? I mean, honestly.
Because she's a fucking bitch, dude. I mean, because she's a psychopath. She has no guilt about what she did.
No.
What we all know she did. She has no feelings of guilt, no feelings of remorse.
She's dying to find a way to monetize her story,
Yeah.
no matter what that story
Which is disgusting.
Yeah, I know.
And still blame everyone but herself for what happened when we know you killed your kid. I still cannot. That was such a miscarriage of justice. I still cannot believe that Casey Anthony was found not guilty and that she lives and breathes and walks around in the world
I
and
know.
has a life
I know.
and breaks up marriages and stuff.
She's disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Dylan, thank you for sitting down with me today. The majority of this story was gleaned from newspapers,
Okay.
a lot of news reports. Not a book written on this case,
Yeah, there
which
you
I
go.
also find interesting. I'm surprised that it has not received more attention.
Well, it's a crazy story. I mean, really.
I'll see if I can find clips of the wife swap episode and post it on Instagram.
I'm going to go see if I can look up that episode.
And I'll post a link for our patrons
But yeah, I
on
mean,
Patreon.
you're totally right about, even though it does have a conclusion, you're left kind of wondering. So
Why?
Yeah, I
Like,
know
why. Why did this happen?
All right. Thank you for that, Heather. And thank you for doing all your hard work to make this possible.
You know, when I'm just sitting and looking when I'm doing it,
That's right.
sitting and looking at books and stuff.
No, it's funny. I do work weird hours, but you'll be like researching like in the middle of the morning.
Dude, I went to bed at like 4 a.m.
I'll be at work. It should be 2:00 in the morning. I'm like, what are you doing up? You should be getting some sleep. And she's like, I'm working on the pod. I was like, all right.
Yeah, I know. I think I finished typing this up at like 4 a.m.
Well, thank you for the hard work, and thank you to all our listeners and our patrons for their direct support. So we can't wait to talk to you again, and we will see you in an episode of Sometime This Week.
Sometime this
wait
week.
for it. Sometime this week. Yeah.
We hope.
But and this is what you tune in for, the highly polished and heavily produced episodes of Mountain Murder. That's what you get from us.
Keeping it real.
We keep it real.
Authentic.
You know, I think that word has been used to describe us quite a bit. And, you know, people will often say it's like I'm just with some friends.
Nothing fancy. You ain't getting nothing fancy here.
That could be our clothing brand.
Probably ain't going to get many fancy words.
Nope.
We're going to talk real common to you.
I am still pushing for a soundboard, but Heather's not letting me get one yet. Maybe I'll get one and use it on Patreon episodes.
Yeah, we need you to chime in with like a gorilla sound or something.
Yeah.
Or like,
elephant.
what's his name?
Tarzan.
That guy.
Yeah.
You know, I have like such a brain fog lately, and I know it's probably just my age and the things that happen to your body when you're a middle-aged woman. But I have like the worst brain fog. I cannot remember shit.
Right.
Like basic stuff. I'll be like, you know, that thing, and it's like the simplest thing, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it is.
Oh.
And then like 20 minutes later, I'll remember the word.
It'll be like car.
Yeah. So if I sound like I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about on the podcast, it's probably because I have like this brain fog.
Poor thing.
I don't know what I'm talking about half the time.
And you guys know me. You all know me. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, so I guess we're in the same boat now.
Come on in the back of the boat and sit down with me. Get out from the front.
Do you even know how to row the boat, Dylan?
No.
Well, I know how to rudder, so I'm going to put you up front rowing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to direct you like left, left, to the right, to the left, to the left. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Isn't that how you Tootsie Roll?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just think of it like that.
All right.
And so while you're paddling, I'll just rudder the boat.
Yeah, I want to get ruddered.
I think you've been ruddered one too many times, Dylan.
I blow the gasket. All right. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I'm Gina,
And I'm Amber.
and we are here to bring you the Weird True Crime Podcast, where we cover true crime cases that will leave you asking yourself, did that really happen?
We'll dive into well-known and not so known cases throughout history. Some are unsolved and some are just unbelievable.
We'll also talk about current news topics that range from kooky to questionable on episodes that we like to call Weird Headline.
Be sure to subscribe and listen on your favorite podcast service.